Welcome back. You think you forget English because your memory is bad. That is the story you keep telling yourself, and it sounds logical, but it is not true. You don't forget because you don't try hard enough. You forget because you were always tense when you learn. You listen to English like something that can judge you, not like a language, like a test. Every word feels heavy. Every sentence feels like pressure. So your brain does the only thing it can do. It lets go. Most people never notice this part. They only see the results, the empty mind, the silence when they want to speak, the feeling of, I knew this before. If you saw this earlier, you might have stopped blaming yourself. You might have understood why nothing stays. This video is not here to motivate you, and it will not give you quick tricks. It is here to say the quiet part out loud. This is English Awakened. We talk about the things you already feel, but rarely admit. Before you forget a word, something already went wrong. Not in your memory, but in your body. Most people think forgetting happens after learning. They are wrong. Forgetting starts before you even begin. You sit down to study English. Nothing bad is happening yet, but your shoulders are tight. Your breath is shallow. Your mind is already rushing forward. You are not present. You are preparing to survive. You open a video, or a book, or an app, and quietly, without words, you say to yourself, I must remember this. That sentence looks harmless, but it changes everything. The moment you say, I must remember, your brain stops listening. It starts guarding, because must means danger. It means pressure. It means something bad will happen if you fail. Your brain does not care about English. It cares about safety. So it switches mode, not learning mode. Protection mode. Most people never see this shift. They only see the result later. The blank mind, the missing words, the frustration. But the damage happened earlier. Think about how you really study. You don't listen with curiosity. You listen with tension. You don't read to understand. You read to catch mistakes. You don't speak to express. You speak to avoid sounding stupid. That is not learning. That is defense. And the brain does not store memories when it feels under attack. It doesn't matter if the attack is real or imagined. For your brain, fear of embarrassment feels the same as danger. So it drops the information, not because it is useless, but because it is too heavy. Imagine carrying a backpack. At first, it is light. You don't notice it. Then every day, you add one more stone, a new word, a new rule, a new correction, a new comparison with someone better than you. You never remove anything. You only add. And one day, you can't carry it anymore. When that happens, your body does not ask politely. It lets go. You don't forget English. You drop it. Most learners don't understand this. They think the solution is more discipline, more repetition, more force. So they push harder. They wake up earlier. They study longer. They watch more videos. But the backpack gets heavier, and each session feels worse than the last. You start avoiding English, not because you are lazy, but because your body remembers the weight. This is why motivation never lasts. You are not avoiding learning. You are avoiding pain. Here is something few people admit. You don't hate English. You hate how English makes you feel about yourself. Small, slow, behind. You hear your own voice in English and you cringe. You remember a moment. Someone corrected you. Someone laughed. Or maybe no one did. But you imagined they did. Your brain does not forget that. So next time, before you even open your mouth, your body tightens. And in that state, memory does not form. Most people blame their brain, but the brain is doing its job. It is protecting you from a situation you marked as unsafe. There is another layer people miss. You are not only trying to learn English, you are trying to control how you appear. You want to sound smart, clear, confident. So every sentence becomes a performance. You monitor yourself while speaking. You listen to your own mistakes while still trying to continue. That splits your attention. Half of you is speaking, half of you is judging. Nothing stays when attention is divided. This is why you forget words you know. You didn't learn them, you fought them, and fights leave no memory, only tension. Think about moments when you remember things easily. A song you heard many times, a line from a movie, a phrase someone said without effort. You didn't try to remember those. You were relaxed. Your brain was open. But when it comes to English, you never allow that state. You sit down already disappointed with yourself, already behind, already late. So you start from lack. And lack creates pressure. Pressure creates noise. And noise blocks memory. Most learners are stuck in this loop for years. They keep asking, what technique should I use? What method works best? But the problem is not the method. The problem is the condition in which you are trying to remember. You are asking your brain to store information while telling it. If you fail, you are not good enough. That message is louder than any word list. So the brain chooses silence. It chooses forgetting. Not because you are weak, but because you are human. If you stop here for a second and really look at your experience, you might notice something uncomfortable. You were never bad at learning. You were harsh. Harsh with your pace. Harsh with your voice. Harsh with your mistakes. And memory does not grow in a hostile environment. Most people don't want to see this, because it means the problem is not outside. It means the way you approach learning is the real obstacle. Before you forget English, you forget to feel safe. And as long as that stays the same, nothing will stay in your mind for long. Not words, not grammar, not confidence. In the next part, we will look at what really happens while you are learning. Not the exercises, not the tools, but the quiet behaviors that slowly erase everything before it has a chance to settle. You might think this is just mindset, but it shows up in very small actions. Notice what you do before studying. You clean your desk. You open many tabs. You search for the best video. Not because you are curious, but because you are delaying. Your body already knows this will not feel good. So you prepare, and prepare, and prepare. Preparation looks productive, but often it is fear wearing a clean shirt. You tell yourself, I just need the right method. But what you really want is control. Control over mistakes. Control over forgetting, control over how you look, and control kills memory, because memory needs space, and space only appears when you stop watching yourself so closely. There is something else happening that most learners never name. You don't allow English to be unfinished. Every word must be clear. Every sentence must be correct. Every meaning must be locked in. So when something is unclear, your body tightens again. You don't sit with confusion. You fight it. But confusion is not the enemy. It is the doorway. Children don't understand everything. That's why they remember. Adults panic when they don't understand. That's why they forget. When you hear a sentence and miss one word, you stop listening. Your mind goes back. What was that word? Why didn't I catch it? While you are stuck there, English keeps moving. So you miss the next sentence, and the next. At the end, you say, I understand nothing. But that is not true. You understood parts. You just refuse to let parts be enough. This is another weight in the backpack, the need to understand everything. Memory does not work like a camera. It works like fog, slow, soft, unclear at first. But you demand sharpness immediately. And when you don't get it, you blame yourself. Here is a quiet truth. Most people don't fail to remember English. They fail to tolerate the feeling of not knowing. So they rush. They translate in their head. They look for subtitles. They pause every few seconds. That looks like effort. But it breaks the natural rhythm. Your brain never relaxes long enough to let patterns form. So later, nothing feels familiar. You think memory is about repetition. But before repetition works, recognition must appear. And recognition only appears when you stay long enough without fighting. Another thing people don't want to hear. You treat English like a task, not like an environment. You enter, you try to take something, and you leave. But language doesn't work like that. It works like a room. You don't memorize a room. You stay in it. You notice things without trying. The light, the sound, the feeling. English can work the same way, but not if you are in a hurry. Most learners are always in a hurry. I should be better by now. I've studied for years. I'm still bad. That voice follows you into every session, so even before you start, you are already disappointed. Disappointment is heavy, and heavy minds don't remember. There is also shame. You don't like to say this out loud, but you feel behind. You see people who speak easily. You compare, and quietly, you turn that comparison into pressure. Pressure to catch up, pressure to prove something. But language is not a race, and memory does not respond to urgency. It responds to familiarity. The more you rush, the more foreign English feels. So your brain keeps it at a distance. This is why you can remember useless things. Memes, random lines, songs. There is no pressure there, no identity attached. But English feels personal. It touches your self-image, your intelligence, your worth. So your brain treats it carefully. Too carefully. And in that carefulness, nothing sticks. Before you forget English, you are already carrying fear of mistakes, fear of sounding stupid, fear of wasting time, fear of never being good enough. That is too much weight. So the brain does the kind thing. It lets the words pass through, not because they don't matter, but because you matter more. If this feels uncomfortable to hear, that is normal. Most people prefer techniques, because techniques don't ask you to look at how you treat yourself. But memory listens to that first, before flashcards, before repetition, before any method. If you don't change this stage, the next stages won't work. And this is why most people stay stuck no matter how many tools they try. They keep changing what they use, but never change how they enter the room, and the room stays hostile. Before you forget English, you forget to slow down. Before you forget words, you forget to breathe. And before memory fails, the body already decided this is not a safe place to stay. What is really happening while you learn? While you are learning English, you think the problem is memory. But memory is not what is failing. Attention is. And attention is not missing. It is being pulled apart. You sit there. The video is playing. The voice is speaking English. And at the same time, Another voice is also speaking. Your own. It comments on everything. That was too fast. I should know this. Why can't I remember? I'm so bad at listening. So now there were two sounds, English and judgment. That judgment does not sound loud. It sounds normal, familiar. You think it is you, but that second voice is noise. And noise is the enemy of memory. Think about this carefully. You are not fully listening to English. You are listening through anxiety, like trying to hear music while someone keeps tapping your shoulder. Your brain is busy managing feelings, not storing information. Most learners believe learning happens when they are actively thinking. So they keep thinking, they analyze, they translate, they check themselves. But language is not built by constant thinking. It is built by exposure without interruption. An interruption is exactly what you do to yourself. You don't let English flow. You stop it every few seconds. You pause the video. You rewind. You look up words. Again and again. You think this shows seriousness. But what it really shows is distrust. You don't trust that your brain can catch up. So you control. And control breaks rhythm. Rhythm is important, not for music, for memory. When rhythm is broken, patterns cannot form. So later, nothing feels familiar. You hear the same sentence again, and it feels new, not because you forgot it, but because you never allowed it to settle as a whole. Another quiet habit. You listen with subtitles. At first, it feels helpful, clear, comforting. But notice what happens. Your eyes read. Your ears become secondary. You are not hearing English. You are reading your language while English plays in the background. That is not input. That is distraction. So when subtitles are gone, your brain panics. It never learned to stay with sound. And sound is where memory lives. You don't remember how words look. You remember how they feel when you hear them again. But you rarely let that feeling grow. Because you rush. You always rush to understanding. The moment something is unclear, you jump in. You don't let confusion exist. But confusion is not a problem. It is a stage. When you skip that stage, memory skips too. Most learners don't understand this. They believe learning should feel clear, smooth, organized. So when it feels messy, they think something is wrong. So they interfere. But interference is exactly what stops memory from forming. Now look at how you speak. When you try to speak English, you don't speak. You assemble. You choose words. You arrange grammar. You monitor your accent. All in real time. That is too much. You are asking your brain to do 5 jobs at once. So it drops the least important one. Memory. You forget words you used yesterday, not because they disappeared, but because your attention was split when you used them. You were present and absent at the same time. Half inside the sentence, half watching yourself from outside. That split is costly. Language needs immersion, but you never fully enter. You stand at the door, checking if you look okay, so you never feel at home. Here is another behavior. You finish a lesson and immediately evaluate yourself. Did I learn anything? Was this useful? Why do I still feel bad? That evaluation comes too early. Memory needs time, silence, distance. But you don't give it that. You demand proof right away. So when proof doesn't appear, you feel disappointed. Disappointment becomes the final emotion of the session. And that emotion is what your brain remembers, not the words, the feeling. So next time, your brain brings that feeling back, and learning feels heavy again. This is how a loop forms, not because of bad memory, but because of emotional residue. Most people underestimate this. They think memory is neutral. It is not. Memory is emotional. It remembers what matters and what feels safe. If learning feels like self-judgment, your brain keeps distance. Another thing, you treat every session like it must produce results. You sit down with a goal. I need to improve my listening. I need to remember vocabulary, so every minute is measured. That creates pressure, and pressure creates noise. Noise blocks memory. There is a reason you remember things from moments when you were not trying. A joke, a random phrase, a line you heard without effort. There was no goal attached, so your brain was relaxed. During learning, you rarely allow that state. You are always chasing progress, but progress is not visible in the moment. It appears later, quietly. And because you don't see it, you think nothing is happening. So you change methods, change videos, change teachers. But the problem is not the tool. It is the constant switching. Memory likes stability. Same voice, same context, same environment. But you keep resetting the scene. Your brain never settles. Think of memory like sitting in a room. If you keep opening the door and changing rooms, you never notice anything. But if you stay, small details appear. Learning English works the same way. But you don't stay. You jump, and jumping feels active, but it prevents depth. Another hidden pattern. You learn English while thinking about your level. Am I A2? Am I B1 yet? So everything you hear is filtered through judgment. This is too easy. This is too hard. That judgment again. Noise. Instead of simply hearing, you label. And labeling pulls you out of experience. Memory lives inside experience, not labels. You also compare during learning. You remember someone else, how fluent they sound, how easy it looks. So now, English is no longer just English. It becomes a mirror, and you don't like what you see. So your body tightens again, and memory closes. Most people don't realize how much self-talk happens during learning. They think learning is about content, but content is only half. The other half is how you treat yourself while content passes through you. If that treatment is harsh, memory resists. Another subtle habit. You don't let silence exist. When you don't understand, you fill the gap. You translate. You repeat. You check. Silence feels dangerous, but silence is where integration happens. Your brain connects dots when you stop interfering. But you rarely stop. You are afraid that if you don't actively do something, nothing will happen. That fear pushes you to act, and action feels productive. But learning is not always action. Sometimes it is allowance. Allowance is uncomfortable because it feels passive. But memory needs it. Here is something important. When you are learning English, you are not only learning language, you are rehearsing a relationship with yourself. If that relationship is tense, language absorbs that tension. So later, when you try to recall words, you also recall the tension. And the words hide. This is why memory feels unreliable. It is tied to emotion. During learning, you create emotional associations. Most of them are negative, not because English is bad, but because you push yourself in every session. Push to improve, push to catch up, push to be better. But language grows when pushed less. You don't notice this because pushing looks responsible. Relaxation looks lazy, but relaxation is not laziness. It is openness, and openness is the condition for memory. Most learners never experience this. They're always slightly stressed, not enough to panic, enough to block. So they live in a gray zone, always studying, never absorbing. Another thing that happens during learning, you finish a sentence in English and immediately think in your language. You don't let English echo. You translate it, judge it, explain it. That kills the sound. Memory needs sound patterns, not explanations. When you explain too much, you replace experience with analysis. Analysis is useful, but not during exposure. Exposure needs simplicity, but you complicate it because you don't trust simplicity. You think learning must feel hard. So when it feels easy, you doubt it, and doubt interrupts. Think about how you learn your own language. You didn't analyze. You didn't test yourself. You were surrounded, and you were allowed to be wrong. During English learning, you give yourself no such space. You expect adult-level performance with beginner-level tolerance. That mismatch creates stress. Stress blocks memory. It is simple, but not easy to accept, because it means you are part of the problem, not in a blaming way, in a human way. During learning, you are trying to protect your image. That protection costs memory. The brain can either learn or protect identity. It rarely does both at once. So every time you think, I don't want to sound stupid, learning slows. Every time you think, I should already know this, memory fades. These thoughts are small, but they are constant, like background noise. You don't notice them, but they drain attention, and attention is the fuel of memory. Without attention, nothing stays. So during learning, the real work is not vocabulary. It is noticing the noise, not fighting it, just seeing it. Because once you see it, it loses power. But most people never look there. They keep changing methods, and the noise stays. In the next part, we will not add more techniques. We will look at what happens after you stop forcing, after you stop trying to control memory, after you allow learning to be quieter, because that is where things finally start to stay. There is one more thing happening during learning that almost nobody talks about. You are watching yourself learn, not consciously, but constantly. You notice how focused you are, how distracted you are, how much you understand. This constant monitoring pulls you out of the experience. It is like looking at yourself in a mirror while trying to walk. You can still move, but every step feels awkward. Language needs flow, but self-awareness breaks flow. You are too aware of yourself to forget yourself. And forgetting yourself is exactly when learning happens. Think about moments when time passed quickly. You didn't check yourself. You didn't ask, am I doing this right? You were just there. During English learning, you are rarely just there. You are always checking progress, checking mistakes, checking feelings, so your mind never rests long enough to absorb. Another quiet behavior. You finish a sentence in English and you immediately repeat it in your head, not to enjoy it, but to test it. Did I say that correctly? Was the grammar right? That testing happens too soon, before the sound can settle. So instead of memory, you create tension, and tension replaces familiarity. This is why English never feels natural, not because it isn't, but because you never let it become familiar. You interrupt the process every time it begins. Another pattern. You treat mistakes like interruptions, something to fix immediately. But mistakes are part of the signal. They show where attention was, where it slipped, where something almost formed. But instead of letting that happen, you correct. Correction pulls you out again, so nothing completes. Memory likes completion, but you rarely allow anything to finish. You jump in too early. You think speed means intelligence, so when you hesitate, you feel embarrassed. That embarrassment shows up in your body. Your throat tightens, your voice lowers, your breath shortens. In that state, memory does not work. The brain is busy managing threat. Another thing, you learn English as if someone is watching, even when no one is there. An invisible audience. You imagine reactions, judgment, comparison. So your body behaves as if you are on stage. Stage mode is not learning mode. Stage mode is performance. Performance uses memory. It does not build it. You are asking memory to grow while acting like it is being tested. That is a contradiction. During learning, you often rush to produce. You want to speak early, show results, but production before absorption creates fragility. You speak with weak foundations, so every mistake feels bigger, and bigger mistakes create more fear. And fear blocks memory, so next time you hesitate more, and hesitation breaks flow. This is why speaking never improves even when you practice. You are practicing under pressure, and pressure trains avoidance, not fluency, another subtle habit. You finish learning and immediately distract yourself. You check your phone. You switch tasks. No pause, no quiet. Memory needs a moment of stillness after input. That is when the brain organizes. But you never allow that, so information stays scattered. Later, it feels gone, but it was never organized. You don't forget it. It never became stable. Most people think learning happens during study time, but a lot of memory forms after. In the quiet moments, you skip those, so memory stays weak. Another thing during learning, you treat every word as equally important, so everything feels heavy. But the brain needs contrast. Some things matter now. Some things can wait. But you don't allow hierarchy, so attention spreads thin. Thin attention creates thin memory. This is why nothing feels solid. You are trying to hold too much at once. And when the brain cannot choose, it drops everything. During learning, you are also carrying expectations. I should understand this today. I should remember this tomorrow. Expectations pull you into the future. Memory happens in the present. If you are not present, memory cannot attach. You are already thinking about results, tests, conversations. So English passes through without landing. Another uncomfortable truth. You don't fully trust the process, so you interfere. You think if you don't push, nothing will happen. But pushing creates resistance. Language is absorbed, not forced. But forcing feels active. So you prefer forcing, even when it doesn't work, because doing something feels safer than allowing. During learning, you are often impatient with silence. When nothing seems to happen, you assume failure. But nothing happening is often integration. The brain working quietly. You interrupt that because it feels unproductive. So you never feel progress. And because you never feel progress, you push harder next time. The loop continues. Another layer. You learn English with the idea that one day it will be over. One day, you will know English. So learning feels temporary, like suffering for a future reward. That mindset adds pressure, and pressure makes every session heavy. But language is not a destination. It is an environment. You don't finish environments. You live in them. When you stop treating English like a project, memory relaxes. But during learning, you treat it like a task to complete. So your brain stays tense. There is also impatience with yourself. You don't accept your current level. You see it as a flaw. So everything you do is colored by dissatisfaction. That dissatisfaction is loud, louder than English itself. And memory listens to the loudest signal, not the content. During learning, the loudest signal is often self-criticism. So memory stores that instead. This is why, when you think about English, you feel tired, not because of the language, but because of the constant internal pressure. If you pay attention, you will see that forgetting is not random. It happens more when you are tense, when you rush, when you judge yourself. And it happens less when you are calm, when you are curious, when you forget to monitor. Memory follows your state, not your effort. Most learners never see this because they look in the wrong place. They look at tools, methods, techniques. But during learning, the real obstacle is the way you stay with yourself. If that stays the same, nothing else changes. In the next part, we will not add pressure. We will remove it. Not by forcing relaxation, but by shifting one small thing in how you relate to forgetting. Because when you stop fighting memory, memory stops running away. After you stop forcing memory, something strange happens. Not immediately, not in a dramatic way. Nothing explodes. Nothing suddenly becomes easy. At first, it feels like nothing changed. And that is exactly why most people miss it. They are waiting for a signal, a feeling of improvement, a clear result. But memory doesn't announce itself. It appears quietly. After you stop reacting the old way, English starts to feel less hostile, not friendly, just neutral. And neutral is already a big shift. You listen again. The words still pass quickly. You still miss things, but you don't chase them as hard. You let a sentence go without pulling it apart. And something stays, not the whole sentence, not every word. A shape, a rhythm, a sense of familiarity. That familiarity is fragile. If you grab it, it breaks. So you don't. You let it sit. This is difficult because you are used to effort. You are used to doing something when you feel uncertain, but now you do less. And doing less feels wrong at first, like you are being irresponsible. But notice what changes in your body. Your breath is slower, your shoulders drop. And when the body softens, memory opens. You stop checking yourself so often, not because you decided to, but because checking feels unnecessary. English is no longer a test. It is just sound again. And sound repeats itself naturally. You hear the same phrase later, and something clicks. Not, I memorized this. But, I've heard this before. That recognition feels different. It does not come with tension. It comes with calm. That is memory working. Most people think memory is effort, but effort creates resistance. Memory is recognition, and recognition needs time, not pressure. After you stop forcing, you also stop panicking when you forget. You forget a word, and instead of collapsing inside, you pause. You let the sentence move around it, and often the word comes back. Not because you searched, but because you made space. Sometimes it doesn't come back. And nothing bad happens. That is new. Before, forgetting meant failure. Now forgetting is just a moment. That shift changes everything. Your brain stops marking forgetting as danger, so it stops hiding information. You don't notice this change in one day. You notice it when English stops exhausting you, when you finish listening and you don't feel drained, when you speak and your voice doesn't shake as much. Not perfect, just steadier. After you stop forcing, you also stop rushing. You stay longer with the same voice, the same content, not because you were disciplined, but because you were not fighting anymore. And staying creates depth. Depth creates familiarity. Familiarity creates memory. This is the order most people reverse. They want memory first, then comfort. But comfort comes first. Memory follows. You also stop treating English like a mirror of your worth. It becomes a tool again, not a judge. So mistakes lose their emotional charge. They are still mistakes, but they don't define you. Without that weight, your brain takes more risks, and risk is necessary for language to grow. After you stop forcing, you stop performing. You speak less carefully. And paradoxically, more clearly. Because clarity does not come from control. It comes from flow. Flow appears when you trust the process enough to stop interfering. This trust is not optimism. It is observation. You notice that when you relax, things stay longer. When you push, they disappear. So you adjust. Not dramatically, quietly. You don't tell yourself, I will change my mindset. You just react differently. You forget a word and you don't punish yourself. You miss a sentence and you don't rewind immediately. You finish learning and you sit in silence for a minute. These are small shifts, but they change the environment. And memory responds to environment. After you stop forcing, English starts showing up outside study time. A phrase appears in your head. A sentence sounds familiar in a movie. You didn't plan this. You didn't review. It just happens. That is when you realize memory was never broken. It was blocked. Blocked by pressure. Blocked by self-judgment. Blocked by constant interference. When those fade, memory does what it always did. Most people never reach this stage because it looks passive. There is no feeling of control. No sense of, I'm doing it right. But there is a quiet confidence, not excitement, stability. You no longer ask, why can't I remember? You ask less questions overall. You stay. And staying is enough. This does not mean English becomes easy. It means it becomes possible, without drama, without self-hate. And that is a bigger change than most techniques can offer. You don't wake up fluent. You wake up less tense. And from there, everything grows naturally. You don't need to change everything today. You don't need a new method or more discipline. Just notice one thing. The next time you forget English, don't react the old way. Don't rush. Don't judge. Don't tighten. Pause. Let the moment pass without turning it into a story about you. That is enough. This is English Awakened. We don't push language. We make space so it can stay.